Tafawa Balewa Square, TBS. Tafawa Balewa Square was initially used as a horsing ground called Lagos Race Course. The edifice was constructed by General Yakubu Gowon in 1972 and named after Nigeria's first Prime Minister, Sir Tafawa Balewa. Tafawa Balewa Square is located at 45/57 Mase Bangboshe Street on Lagos Island, Lagos, and referred to as TBS. TBS is a 50,000-seater capacity venue and houses the Remembrance Arcade, the 26-story Independence House, which at a time was the country's tallest building. When Lagos served as the country's seat of government, the National Assembly Complex was within the TBS. Also in the square are the National Broadcasting Commission Office, the Nigerian Hydrological Services Agency Office, shopping centers, travel agencies, restaurants, car parking lots, and a bus terminal. Tafawa Balewa Square is adorned with beautiful statues of white horses and red eagles, symbols of strength and dignity. Our historic neighbors include the King's College and the Holy Cross Cathedral. Tafawa Balewa Square hosted some of the country's memorable events, such as the Independence Day in 1960, when Nigeria gained independence from Britain, the Armed Forces Remembrance Day, which is celebrated annually on January 15. The edifice is a national cultural asset. Tafawa Balewa Square. Souk enlightenment. We've got just what you need right here at Femi Wash Media. Call it the Midas Touch and you wouldn't be wrong. Let us record, produce, mix and master your audio like nobody does. Reach us on our contact today for the best quality job.
My name is Yinka Babalola.
My name is Ijoma Pelokoro.
My name is Joshua Hassan.
I am Rotarian or Mosunde Lawson.
It's Ife Yunwarita Ejeze. My friends call me Ife.
My name is Rotarian Lola Dare.
I'm inviting you to keep watching Souk News. It's the right station to tune to.
I like Souk News. Souk News is good.
I want to charge you all to listen to Souk News, watch the news.
You can have unlimited news first time.
Find Souk News. Be with Souk News. Never switch off. You are better for it. Souk News is the real thing.
Listen to their coverage and you'll be glad you did.
Turn to your YouTube, turn to your Instagram, turn to all your digital channels and look for Souk News.
Keep watching.
Keep watching.
Please, guys, keep watching.
Souk News.
The Three Wise Men. Iconic sculptures and statues adorn major metropolitan cities of the world. In Lagos, Nigeria, the statue of three men designed to depict the state's cultural heritage and to usher in visitors and tourists into the ever-accommodating center of excellence is no doubt an astounding work of art. Originally built under the administration of Colonel Raji Rasaki, designed by Bodu Shodende in 1991 and standing over 12 feet high, referred to as Agba Meta or Aro Meta, the three sculptured chiefs were placed along the Lagos-Ibadan toll gate to welcome people coming into Lagos State. The statue called the Three Wise Men by many has become a major signature for the state. Three white-capped chiefs clad in white wrappers, knotted across their shoulders and with clenched right fists are shown in the artwork. The images fascinate and create impressions in the minds of visitors coming into the state, captivating the attention of visitors who look with keen interest, pondering on the messages which the posture of the engraved images signifies. The Three Wise Men has been relocated thrice from its original position at Ojodu Berger end of Lagos-Ibadan Expressway to Magodo area before its final relocation to its present site at Olowopopo Drive. The sculpture has suffered severe damages over the years and renovated. Bodu Shodende, through this sculpture, depicted the highest honor that can be afforded to anyone in the eco-greeting tradition. The three wise men are Arometa, Suk, Enlightenment.
I'm okay.
My name is Raymond Bola Brown.
Hi, my name is Fred Amata, and you are on to Suk News.
If you are watching this channel for the first time, make sure you continue to watch it because this is Suk News.
Shout out to Suk News. Actually, I don't know. I really enjoyed the little moment I spent with you, and I think with more of this.
Suk News. Here's the Suk News who had the courage to transcend a locked off camera and actually have a conversation with a human being. It's a pleasure, Suk News. Thank you very much.
The challenge of governance is to see how we can leverage what is on the ground and convert this to wealth for the people.
Russia, China are gaining entry into Africa, and it would appear that some Western countries are losing out.
You're working as an expatriate worker, then you're paid in your currency. But then if you must spend those money, you need to convert those money to the local currency to spend.
For Social Security to work, we need to know exactly how many we are. We don't have a precise number. We need to know exact location of people.
When we address this exchange rate volatility, we will see definitely cost of goods and services will come down.
From a security point of view, we should employ the technology to ensure that we can track individuals and goods within the continent.
This is Early Exchange with Femi Ayodele.
You know, the Early Exchange is all about shaping policy and advancing development. With our conversation today, we're set to give you the best of programming.
And Blessing Aiche.
We do hope that you enjoy every time you spend with us here today. The world needs peace. The world needs to come to a round table and find solutions to the pockets of troubles.
Early Exchange, shaping policy, advancing development.
Yes, indeed, it's another beautiful day, another opportunity for us to look at issues related to business, finance, and the economy. This is Early Exchange, and I am Femi Ayodele. Today, we're going to start our conversation from India. We're going to look at the power sector. We'll be talking about the electricity generation in India. India has made a new history as the second world largest user of coal when it comes to electricity generation. We're going to look at that. Don't forget, it's your program. This implies that you just have to be part of this conversation. And how to do that? You just need to go on our social media platform, on our YouTube page, to share your view so that your voice can be heard. Today is looking like a special day for blue. So listen, from my outfit, you will know that something is happening. Good morning.
Good morning, Femi.
Yeah.
I see the camera went bad.
Yeah, no. It's working. It's actually working. In fact, you know, I told you yesterday that I'm going to re-strategize. So this is the output.
I too am re-strategizing. You can't be twinning with me for free.
Well, it's a good one. That's the spirit of Early Exchange. Great.
Yeah, so the spirit of Early Exchange will look powerful just to help you start it and inspire you to have a powerful day. You can make great decisions on where to invest your money, make good profit out of it. And so we'll begin by updating you with current happenings. You need to know what's happening globally so that you're aware of opportunities. Let's get now to the news studio.
Hello and welcome to the news update on Suk News. I am Ikenna Mba. The Nigerian National Automotive Design and Development Council is set to establish standards for electric and compressed natural gas (CNG) vehicles across the country. The Director General of the Council, Joseph Osanikmi, who revealed this at a workshop in Nasarawa North, central part of the country, noted that the agency also plans to validate the National Occupational Standards for electric and CNG vehicles conversion and maintenance. During the workshop in Nasarawa, he highlighted the workshop's goal to create a framework for skill development and standardized procedures in vehicle energy source conversion, calibration, and maintenance. According to him, these efforts aim to spur job creation, curb greenhouse gas emissions, and bolster the automotive sector, also underscoring the importance of the Nigerian Automotive Industry Development Plan 2023 to 2033, initiated by the federal government to rejuvenate the automotive industry through technological advancements and skill enhancement. The International Monetary Fund, IMF, has called on the Nigerian government to address the soaring price of essential goods such as food, drugs, and transportation by implementing social protection measures, while stressing the necessity to easing the burden faced by Nigerians due to the removal of fuel subsidies by the current administration. IMF's Director of Communications, Julie Kozak, stressed the urgency of mitigating food insecurity, especially with food price inflation soaring to 35% year-over-year in January. The recently approved Targeted Social Safety Net program, aimed at providing cash transfers to vulnerable households, is seen as a crucial step in alleviating this hardship. Additionally, he commended the recent actions of Nigeria's Monetary Policy Committee for tightening monetary policy as a positive move to combat inflation and stabilize the naira amidst heightened inflationary pressures. Ivory Coast Markets Regulator has issued a warning to cocoa exporters, cautioning against paying prices exceeding the mandated rates for beans delivered to their facilities at the country's ports, with penalties including fines and license revocation for violators. This comes amidst Ivory Coast and Ghana experiencing their worst harvest in years, with Ivorian arrivals down over 28% compared to the previous season, leading to a scarcity of supply and record high prices in London and New York. The Coffee and Cocoa Council highlighted the surge in beans purchases and observed instances of exporters overpaying for cocoa. While farmers are permitted to earn above a minimum price, fixed prices along the cocoa supply chain forbid overpayment. Additionally, they warned cooperatives and upcountry buyers against stockpiling beans, mandating the sale of stocks to exporters within 21 days. Failure to comply risks confiscation of stocks and suspension from the purchasing system. Despite soaring global cocoa prices, the regulator intends to maintain its price scale unchanged for the upcoming mid-crop harvest. The British government has stressed the necessity of constructing new gas plants or refurbishing existing ones to enhance energy security and mitigate the risk of blackouts. While the country strives to expand its nuclear and wind power capacities to meet climate targets and ensure energy supply, it acknowledges the essential role of increased gas generation as backup. Energy Minister Claire Coutinho underscored the importance of gas as a reliable backup for renewables, highlighting the genuine risk of blackouts without it. As aging power plants shut down, around 5 gigawatts of capacity from either new gas plants or refurbished older ones will be needed, with a focus on ensuring they are net zero ready for future transitions to cleaner energy sources like hydrogen fuel or carbon capture technology. Critics argue that relying on new gas capacity could hinder climate goals and prolong dependence on costly fossil fuels, while proponents assert that zonal electricity pricing proposed by the Department for Energy Security and Net Zero DENSZ could optimize supply and demand, ultimately lowering costs for consumers across the country. Toyota Motor has agreed to grant factory workers their largest pay raise in 25 years, joining other major Japanese companies like Panasonic and Nissan in meeting union demands for significant wage increases as part of the annual negotiations. This move heightens expectations that the Bank of Japan may shift its key policy next week, potentially extending its year-long negative interest rates policy. The agreement signed a departure from the traditionally collaborative relationship between Japanese management and labor, with unions across various industries, including automobiles and electronics, pushing for substantial pay hikes. Economists view this wage increase as crucial for the Bank of Japan to achieve its goal of sustainable wage growth and stable prices, possibly leading to the end of negative interest rates. With workers at major firms seeking annual increases exceeding 5%, analysts anticipate this year's wage hikes to surpass 5%, marking the largest increase in over 3 decades. That's our package on News Update for now. Stay tuned to Early Exchange with Femi and Blessing. I am Ikenna Mba. Do have a productive day.
We've got just what you need right here at Femi Wash Media. Call it the Midas touch and you wouldn't be wrong. Let us record, produce, mix and master your audio like nobody does. Reach us on our contact today for the best quality job.
The challenge of governance is to see how we can leverage what is on the ground and convert this to wealth for the people.
Russia, China are gaining entry into Africa, and it would appear that some Western countries are losing out.
You're working as an expatriate worker, then you're paid in your currency. But then if you must spend those money, you need to convert those money to the local currency to spend.
For Social Security to work, we need to know exactly how many we are. We don't have a precise number. We need to know exact location of people.
When we address this exchange rate volatility, we will see definitely cost of goods and services will come down.
From a security point of view, we should employ the technology to ensure that we can track individuals and goods within the continent.
This is Early Exchange with Femi Ayodele.
You know, the Early Exchange is all about shaping policy and advancing development. With our conversation today, we're set to give you the best of programming.
And Blessing Aiche.
We do hope that you enjoy every time you spend with us here today. The world needs peace. The world needs to come to a round table and find solutions to the pockets of troubles.
Early Exchange, shaping policy, advancing development.
All right, thank you, Nnamdi, for the news update, taking us around the world and giving us the latest development across the globe. On Early Exchange today, we're to look at sustainable development, and our conversation is going to start from Germany, where shipowners are asking the Berlin government to provide direction or legislation as regards carbon trading system in the country. What will be the impact of this on the economy, and how prepared are the shipowners for this kind of legislation as provided by the European Union? Let's see what our in-house guest will have to say about this. We're being joined by Sam Horuji, who is always here as usual. Glad you have joined us this morning.
Good morning, Femi. My pleasure to be here.
Good morning. Welcome
Good
to
morning,
the show.
Blessing, and thank you.
All right, so let's start by looking at the advocacy from the ship owners in Germany, talking about carbon trading system. Now they're asking for proper legislation as regards, the EU agreement concerning carbon trading system. But first of all, give us a background to what this carbon trading system is all about and the essence of this advocacy.
Thank you very much indeed. Just yesterday, the German Shipping Association, VDR, Dr. Martin Kruger was saying that in the last 2 years, the German government, particularly in Berlin, has made some pronouncement in terms of our ship owners should be able to reduce carbon emission. So a policy framework was put in place from Berlin which is escalated into the European Union and Parliament. But then the ship owners are saying that yes, they are willing to comply, but the phasing in terms of percentage reduction in emission, if it's not consistently done, because shipping is vital to global trade. So they want a regulatory framework that spells it out as quickly as possible so that they can calibrate that into their own policy framework. I think that's the background. So what their demand is not that they don't want to comply to those regulatory framework, but that there should be a high level of consistency so that they don't pay certain amounts at certain time, another amount up till about 2045. So they want a clarity in terms of the framework, which was agreed within the lower parliament in Germany. But then the EU has a global framework, so they want clarity as quickly as possible so that they can key into that in terms of their operational planning. And by the way, Germany is the seventh largest in terms of ship ownership, particularly container ships. They have over 1,800 container ships, and they've been serving the global world trade with us. So they need that clarity to be able to plan their future in terms of how they will face their own. And the International Maritime Organization said that ships generally across the world emit about 3% of carbon emission, and that's they need to get into that fray to see how they can resolve that issue as quickly as possible.
All right, so the carbon trading now for countries that many of them are wanting to go into, what's it supposed to achieve and how does it benefit even the countries economically?
It's just the major plan in terms of climate change action to move from, to get into a renewable energy transition. And this agreement has been put in place, but then it should be done in phases. So the benefit is that even ships that are producing about 3% carbon emission will find a way to get technology-driven items to reduce their emission by going green. So in terms of how they move and take their goods across oceans to meet various countries in terms of global trade. So that again is an ambitious plan by the German government. They're taking that initiative to see how they can control that. And the European Union has put a framework, so they need to quickly work that local legislative framework, domestic framework, which they can escalate to the EU so that that can be done as quickly as possible.
Now, making reference to the EU agreement of 2022, one will have expected, since that has provided a kind of legislation for ship owners, it will be easier for the ones in Germany, to be able to key into this. Why the struggle? If there's a legislation on the part of EU, there's an agreement, the 2022 agreement, and shouldn't it been easier to have adopted that to create a framework for the ship owners in Germany?
No, that global framework in terms of maybe a regional, based on the European Union, that framework is there, but you need to domesticate it. That law. There are some peculiarity within the countries that make up the European Union. So the ship owners are saying, yes, that framework is there. How do we run with the local framework? And this presentation was in concert with the Minister for Economic Affairs and Climate Action, who made a presentation to the lower parliament in Germany, so that they get that clarity, and they need that clarity to plan their own policy framework, so they too can benefit from that framework. So I don't think it's a problem. So even global convention, they even have another convention with the International Maritime Organization. So you need to demonstrate those conventions to your local, what you call municipal law, so that you can work with those framework, because there are commitments that had to be made. So those commitments they might factor that into their financial planning and operational efficiency as well.
So from 2022 to this time, it's almost 2 years. Why do you think there's been some delay?
Well, I think it's parliamentary bureaucracy that people need to dot and cross some T's. So that framework is there, but when you domesticate a law, there are some peculiarity that industry need to involve with. So if you don't provide that framework locally, then there's a challenge for those who are in business. And shipping is very critical to global trade. And Germany is one of the major centers when you talk about shipping in Europe. So they need that clarity to be able to do their planning, like I mentioned earlier.
Now, the EU agreement also requires that the ship owners should obtain permits, like a special permit, to be able to engage in this kind of venture. How significant is that? And then do you think that will be like a form of control on those ship owners to standardize the operation?
Yeah, that's the framework that has been put in place at the European Parliament. So to find a way to reduce that emission, everybody has to sign on into that policy framework. I don't think the ship owners actually have a problem, but what they want consistency in terms of the plan. So that plan that is universal, so to speak, across the European Union, and must find a way to get into local law, which those people can abide with. And they equally have commitment with the International Maritime Organization, which is an umbrella regulator for maritime and shipping.
All right, but one would think naturally that shipping companies perhaps will have no business with carbon emissions or carbon credits. What is the link?
But they power their ships, so they equally emit carbon. But in terms of the percentage of carbon release, it's just about 3%. So gradually they need new technologies as well so that they can reduce their emission. And that discussion has taken place at the International Maritime Organization, at the European Union. So it just needs a clarity, and I think it's just a bureaucratic bottleneck in terms of how that policy framework can be put in place, particularly in Germany, which is a major service provider when it comes to shipping.
You know, I was listening to one of the ship owners, complaining that there's no draft bill yet. If you've had this kind of agreement 2 years ago, this is 2024, how difficult it is for a country like that to have a draft bill yet, and then what does that suggest about the bureaucracy? Is it becoming something that is creating bottleneck to the process? 2 years, you don't have a draft bill yet.
And that's the challenge, and that's why that association is crying and drawing attention that we have a global framework, IMO, we have a framework from the European Union, but when you come to local practice, that draft has not been put in place. So they are calling that draft should be put in place so that this framework that has been put in place from the European Union in terms of 40%, 60%, 100% in the next 10 years to 2045. They need that framework to be put in place so that they can plan. So I think the lower house in terms of bureaucracy should be blamed for the delay in looking at a critical sector which contributes a greater percentage of income to the German economy.
Would this be seen as paying lip service to the reduction of carbon emission if at the regional level, talking about the European zone, it has been agreed upon, but domesticating it is dragging?
No, I don't think it's a lip service. Germany, of a truth, is taking the lead in Europe in terms of the policy framework, taking climate change action. And Olashus, the current chancellor, has done so well in that regard. And you can recall that Germany is one of the major polluters in the world as we speak today. So they are trying to create initiative that will reduce carbon emission. They are actually taking leadership in Europe. So I don't think maybe there's an oversight in terms of that draft bill. The House Committee on that may be working behind the scene, but what is in the public domain is that you don't see a draft bill. Maybe the Shippers Association may not have been involved in the process, what you call public participation in terms of bill making.
Now let's look at the the requirement from the EU as regards this. Says the EU wants vessels to pay 40% of their emissions this year, 70% 2025, and 100% in 2026. How visible is this?
Well, the European Parliament, they have done its homework. There will have been some public hearing, and that commitment, I think, will have been made by the ship owners, that association. So I think the issue here is that this agreement at the European Union level that talk about these various percentage timelines. But those timelines are not within the domestic framework. So you need to quickly pull those framework, and they may have some peculiarity that are unique to that country. Maybe that 40% that is proposed may not even be 40% that Germany would pay in the first instance, 75% and 100%. So, if you are able to domesticate that law, then that thing cannot take place. So, they need to quickly work around that framework so that it become a law, and you are able to put ship owners in check in terms of the demand that you are making on them.
What would be the implication of this demand on cost of doing business and even cost of rendering services when it is domesticated? Let's assume it gets reduced or stays at the same 40% emissions of their emissions from 2024, rising to 70% in 2025 and 100% in 2026.
The implications are just far-reaching. If a business operation is going to pay some money and is going to acquire new technologies to remain in business, the implication therefore is that as they acquire those new technology, the cost of the operation will be passed to those who use their services. And the implication is for consumers at the end of the day, we pay more. So I think that's the long and short answer to that. The buying public will eventually pay for that. There's no doubt about that, because the cost of operation to change the technologies that they currently use, the operational cost will increase. Then who take that cost?
The last consumer.
Yeah, the final is the consumer. So those who are involved in container shipment will transfer those costs. By the time they arrive at your harbor, then when you eventually get into the distribution process, then the consumer will pay dearly for that. So, and that's why they need that clarity so that they can put that into their planning processes. They may even have done that in their own stimulation, but waiting for the law to come through. So if they don't have that clarity, then it might be difficult to even get those percentage in terms of what you want them to pay.
All right. Globally, shipping accounts for 3% of CO2 emissions. And what do you make of the attempt to decarbonize shipping activities globally? How successful was that, especially in Africa, where we're battling with the issue of regulation and legislation?
Well, the major ship owners are not domiciled in Africa. They are domiciled in the industrialized world. So I think it's a welcome development. But again, just like any policy statement, any policy framework, it will take some time. Though there are timelines, 2045, 2050, you have almost zero. But then these are ambitious plans. But in terms of reality, this timeline.
Why do you say they're ambitious?
No, they're ambitious in terms of the fact that those countries telling you to reduce your carbon emission are equally investing in coal-driven technology, using other traditional means of energy, which are major polluter, major carbon emission-driven industrial world. Then in this part of the world, we're told that we must catch up quickly. But those investments, and that's why I say to a very large extent, is ambitious. Some of the climate financing option that has been involved in the last climate change conferences up to the ones that we just held in Dubai last year. Some of those options, those finance are not even available yet for people to take advantage of. And that's why I say to a very large extent is ambition, because they are still having massive investments. China, still using coal. Even Germany. So these are core
even
issues.
India as well.
Yes, so, and they are making massive investment. And the percentage of emission from those industrial coal that they use is so much. So when you say by 2045, 2050, we'll have about 0 days, what of the transition, even the transition of 20 years initially, is not been sustainable so far. So in that regard, therefore, it might be difficult to achieve, but it's always good to have milestones that will put us on track in terms of strategic planning.
All right, we'll look at some of those strategic plannings, not just for Africa, but for the world, and even the companies that will be providing technologies that will help the shipping companies and other companies emitting lots of carbon to move away from using technologies that has to do with lots of carbon emission. After this break, do stay tuned.
The challenge of governance is to see how we can leverage what is on the ground and convert this to wealth for the people.
Russia, China are gaining entry into Africa, and it would appear that some Western countries are losing out.
You're working as an expatriate worker, then you're paid in your currency. But then if you must spend those money, you need to convert those money to the local currency to spend.
For Social Security to work, we need to know exactly how many we are. We don't have a precise number. We need to know exact location of people.
When we address this exchange rate volatility, we will see definitely cost of goods and services will come down.
From a security point of view, we should employ the technology to ensure that we can track individuals and goods within the continent.
This is Early Exchange with Femi Ayodele.
You know, the Early Exchange is all about shaping policy and advanced development. With our conversation today, we're set to give you the best of programming.
And Blessing Aiche.
We do hope that you enjoy every time you spend with us here today. The world needs peace. The world needs to come to a round table and find solutions to the pockets of troubles.
Early Exchange, shaping policy, advancing development.
My name is Yinka Babalola.
My name is Ijoma Pelokoro.
My name is Joshua Hassan.
I am Rotarian or Mosunde Lawson.
It's Ife Yunwarita Ejeze. My friends call me Ife.
My name is Rotarian Lola Dare.
I'm inviting you to keep watching Souk News. It's the right station to tune to.
I like Souk News. Souk News is good.
I want to charge you all to listen to Souk News, watch the news.
You can have unlimited news, first time.
Find Souk News. Be with Souk News. Never switch off. You are better for it. Souk News is the real thing.
Listen to their coverage and you'll be glad you did.
Turn to your YouTube, turn to your Instagram, turn to all your digital channels and look for Souk News.
Keep watching.
Keep watching.
Please, guys, keep watching
Souk News.
This is Early Exchange with Femi Ayodele.
You know, the Early Exchange is all about shaping policy and advanced development. With our conversation today, we're set to give you the best of programming.
And Blessing Aiche.
We do hope that you enjoy every time you spend with us here today. The world needs peace. The world needs to come to a round table and find solutions to the pockets of troubles.
Worldly exchange, shaping policy, advancing development.
Many thanks for staying with us. It's still L Exchange, and we're looking at carbon emission, how the world, particularly German, can do better and emit less carbon. And so we're looking at the German Shipowners group, VDR, which is asking for domestication of the European Union legislation regarding carbon emissions. Now, we still have our in-house analyst, Sam Ruje, who is Director, Center for Public Policy, looking into the issue with us. So before we went on the break, we're looking at strategies that can be deployed in ensuring that companies, that the operations are based on using technologies that actually results in lots of carbon emissions can work around that. But according to the VDR, what they said regarding the new routes that they had to take because of the crisis around the Suez Canal. VDR said that current diversions to avoid the Red Sea cost operators $1 million per tour, while the Black Sea situation has eased for German ships. But looking at the long route that they have to take, it looks like they're even going to emit more because they're going to be along that route for long, using more energy. That will further increase the percentage of carbon emissions from the shipping companies at the end of the day.
Precisely, and that's why they are asking for clarity in terms of a domestic law that will empower them. So when they are able to factor those percentages into their operational costs, then they might say this law, based on the current reality of the situation at the Red Sea and the Black Sea and the issues of Russia and Ukraine crisis. So they will emit more. Therefore, they will pay more in terms of the percentage that you are demanding from them. But then if you don't look at their current reality in terms of business operation, then that law may not serve the interests of that country. And I think that's the call that they are making. That's good that you have a framework, but then we need clarity in terms of the local law for us to operate. So they may have their own submissions, their own proposal in terms of what you wanted to pay in terms of 40% for this year, 70 to 75% next year, and the other year. So, but the reality on ground, that demand is not realistic based on the challenge of operation, because they are even spending more money in terms of operation. So they are going to emit more, and then if you say they should pay those percentage based on the routes that they are moving and they are spending more money, then it's going to jeopardize their business interests. So for a win-win situation, they may recalibrate some of those processes when they domesticate it into their local law.
Looking at the global efforts to achieve zero emission by the year 2050, the greatest opposition to that is coming from China, who is the largest coal user in the world, followed by India. How much of setback will that be towards achieving this target of 2050?
I mentioned earlier, and I use the word carefully, very ambitious policy framework, global policy framework. The point is you want to transit into using new technologies. And the values of those new technologies, you have made pledges globally that for us to invest, you need X amount of dollar to be able to move up to 2050. But then those investments are not coming in. And those who made those pledges are equally investing in old technologies that emit carbon. So the concept of international conspiracy and hypocrisy comes into fore. When you look at India, they are firing coal. Look at China, even Germany, finding a way. So, but the pressure is on the global south to buy those new technologies. So they need those monies for us, from us, when they create some of those technology before they decide to see what they can do back home. And I think it's more of, if we use the Nigerian language slang, that's more of lip service into that ambitious plan. We need to move away, but then the reality on ground does not show speedily that by 2050, that zero emission will be achieved.
All right, well, what about the encouragement that some governments want to give to companies like Germany, for instance, launching bidding process for subsidies to support energy-intensive firms switching to green production?
Robert Habeck, that's Deputy Vice Chancellor of Germany and the Minister for Economic Affairs and Climate Action, made this proposal in the lower house of parliament that for us to achieve the 2045, that's Germany's own initiative, to sustain that process, there's a need to provide some incentive amounting to about $4.4 billion to companies that are major emitter, looking at the glass manufacturing company and all that. So these incentives or initiative to some of this industry, there are money to be claimed. So if you are able to acquire new technologies, then you assess this is the initiative. It's equally ambitious, but I think is a plan that Germany has put in place to take a leadership role in terms of see how they can transit quickly. So the first phase of the project is about $4.something billion, which the companies will assess for the next 4 years to see how they can acquire new technologies to that effect. I think is a welcoming development, and that initiative will provide some answers to what Femi asked earlier in terms of how sustainable can we achieve zero emission. So Germany is taking the lead with that initiative. Let's see how that money gets to those companies and how quickly they can acquire new technology so that they can transition into green energy.
Now, if you look at the energy mix of most nations, you always have a combination of renewable and non-renewable sources, even Germany, India, and the big nations. Now, but the issue here is the transition now. How challenging will that be for these nations? And I also want us to look at what is playing out in Africa as well, whereby we're still depending on the conventional means rather than, the renewable sources.
Yes, for the renewable sources or green technology, the problem is, like we said earlier, there were commitments, global commitment towards providing funding for green technology, but those funds are not available. So the challenge for the energy mix will be there for a long while, unless those monies are made available so that you can transit into green technology. So that's a major one. Then on the other hand, Africa, as we speak, in terms of percentage contribution into carbon emission, is far less than the industrialized world. But they are pushing us so hard that we must go green. There's nothing wrong in going green. As they are investing and having a mix of that traditional and green energy, we as a collective, as a people, must equally take the initiative, do what they are doing, and exploit those traditional means of energy that we have in abundance here.
Wouldn't that amount to insincerity and then a setback for the zero emission that we're talking about?
No,
of course, I understand the promoters,
you're making, there is a reality to live with. Is that the promoters are equally abusers.
I understand.
So they're pushing you to go green, and when you go green, some of the technology you require to go green,
investment is there.
They will bring in those technology for you and take your money. Then later they bring part of your money that they have taken to you in form of aid, and they say they are supporting your green energy transitioning. So the point I'm saying is that conspiracy, African leaders must be wise enough to say when you go into all those summit diplomacy where commitments are made, and at the end of the day, the funding is not coming, and somebody that is telling you that we even want you to arrive there earlier is committing the same thing.
Some commitments and
so that's the point. So we need to balance this international hypocrisy or conspiracy. The West does not have the true solution, even though we're blessed with a lot of abundant grid technologies here, the sun, the wind, but we need to take those initiatives. Thank you that we have a new set of law that will help us play in that regard, particularly in Nigeria.
If the West is, on one hand, advocating for zero carbon emission, and on the other hand, making use of the same fossil fuel and other sources of energy that emit lots of carbon, does that go to show that for now, there is no solution for green energy, complete green energy globally?
No, the green energy solution is there globally, but the rate of transitioning in terms of the timelines that the global community has set for itself may not be achievable. Then too, we talk about climate financing. There were commitments that were made. Those commitments has not come to fruition. Therefore, on one hand, I agree with you that that commitment may not be sustainable to some extent, but the green technologies are there. Those who have the opportunity to take advantage of those, even if they don't have the financing, even particularly Africa, we are blessed with abundant sunshine. Let's see how we can use that to our own advantage, pending when the financing. But my submission or my discourse center on the fact that somebody cannot be pushing you in one direction and they are committing same crime, in quotes, and they want you to go the other way. So the point is that we have abundance coal here. Let's be exploiting those coal, even in terms of what we have in the national grid. It's so small. So let's exploit those resources in addition to where we have opportunity for green energy.
Which brings me to the point. If we are to exploit the coal and other sources of energy available, which of course also emit carbon, and the world is saying move away from that, and they are also developing that, isn't it because what they have currently with the green energy, the advancement in technology, cannot sustain the operations of companies, of industries enough as with the other ones? For instance, solar, wind, what they are able to generate from it, the power that they're able to generate from it may not be able to sustain operations as it is for now.
It's able to sustain operation when those commitments in terms of investment made into those sectors are valuable. So, because when you are transitioning from an old regime to a new regime, you need some amount of investment. And those commitments were made globally. But as we speak, those commitments are not on the table for people to assess. So, how do we progress, particularly on the global south, when we're struggling with energy? So, that's the point I'm trying to canvass here, that there's no problem with green technology, but you are telling us that we need to advance quickly, but then you are making some investment in those industries.
Discouraging?
So I don't see the balance in that. That's my own point of view. So we must take advantage of those. We continue to get to the level where those funding is available so that we can take advantage of that. But China can tell us that we need green technology here, make some commitment in terms of funding, provide scholarships to some institutions, and at the end of the day, you're firing coal to provide energy for your people. So we need energy here as well to survive.
All right. Now let's get back to these $4.3 billion green subsidy provided or as launched by the as launched by Germany to encourage investment in green technology. Now, looking at the bidding process, what kind of framework do you think should be put in place to ensure transparency and to also ensure that this investment justifies the purpose intended?
No, I think in terms of that initiative, the framework, there's already a framework put in place. So if you are transiting, so if you are in glass manufacturing company, there's a percentage of emission that you're already putting out there. So you make a proposal in terms of how you are going to go green. Those transitioning, then the fund is released based on your ability to move from your old technology of production to new technology. So the process, based on the kind of environment that they are, that process will be transparent. Then if you go to another set of industry, the policy regime and the transitioning will be different from one industry to the other. So the bidding process framework will be designed based on industry to industry. And once you make some gain, then those funds are released. And I think there will be a window in terms of evaluation, monitoring, so, and you're able to get those incentives. For me, I don't see any problem in terms of the bidding process. So all the framework, the milestones will be there. So once you meet those milestones, the monies will be released to you. And I'm sure those companies that want to access those funds quickly so that they can change their operational processes and take advantage of those funding as well.
Well, let's look at the availability of the money for even the companies, because though Germany wants to become climate neutral by 2045, as we've been talking about since on the show today, they also plan to award companies in sectors such as steel, glass, paper subsidies for their efforts in reducing carbon. But that plan was also put on hold at some point because they had originally planned to offer subsidies up to mid-double-digit billion euro sum. But the program was put at risk by last year's Constitutional Court ruling, stopping the government from using some 60 billion euros of debt for climate protection projects. So do you see issues like this being a hindrance to the monies eventually being made available and even the sustainability of this? If Germany that wants to be the forerunner in this cause is having issues like this, how do you see it happening for other countries around the globe?
And that speaks to the issue that we talked about earlier. You look at a country, Constitutional Court, trying to stop a massive investment in terms of borrowing to support a climate change action. And that is put on hold. But then, because they have made commitment to their people to win election, they are saying that by 2045, they want to stay neutral. But then, in spite of that challenge, they put some funding in place that will help that transitioning process. And I'm sure that some other country, and particularly the Global South, we don't have those resources. And you see the court is saying, don't borrow to finance a climate change action. But then this is the money that I've made available. I'm sure those industry, particularly the steel industry, the paper industry, and the glass industry, which are major polluters, will take advantage of those incentives that are provided. Because when they move into a green energy process, that will equally reduce their cost of production and operation as well.
Let me make reference to a statement credited to the economy minister. He said companies will be compensated for the extra cost of green production in industries where climate-friendly production processes cannot currently operate competitively. Is that a good incentive to?
It is. What that is saying, if I understand that correctly, is that once as a company, if you're able to just make investment into green energy, then
the extra cost.
Yeah, that extra cost is that type of subsidy that will be provided. That means you are not transiting from old technologies, so to speak, to new technology. You are making investment into that. That will help exactly because the process of transitioning into a new scheme.
Comes with extra cost.
Extra cost.
Yeah.
So, but if you are making investment directly, particularly you are starting a new operation and you have that technology to fit into your industry, that's a welcome call.
So for companies that are looking to go into green energy, it seems like this is really good time for them to go all out into it.
Yes, but then you need a massive investment in that sector. Thankfully that Germany is provided the initiative. So companies that play in that sector within that economy will benefit massively. And at the end of the day, once those technologies are sustainable in those environments, they will transfer those technologies to other places. And the cost of transiting eventually will be cheaper for other countries, in my view.
So for Africa, particularly Nigeria, shouldn't it be cheaper to turn to green energy, being that some of the natural resources needed for this are abundantly available here?
But you don't have some of those technology, some of the component. You have the natural endowment in terms of green resource. But then the other input mechanism that you need to fast track those natural endowment. But then the resources are not there. So you still need that technology transfer from the global north to be able to take advantage of those initiatives. And that's why I say that conspiracy must find a way to get off the communication between the global north and the global south. So we need the technologies, we need the investment. You're talking about lithium, for example. We need investment here so that when you manufacture those batteries here, then the cost of providing solar for mini-grid use will become cheaper. But we equally need to rely on them because the level of development in terms of technology, we're not at par with them. That's of the truth. But then we have some other options. The Federal University of Petroleum recently won some prize in terms of using a composite element to generate electricity. So and that can be escalated into a commercial. They won a prize money in the UK recently. So those opportunities are there, but then the government should encourage those things so that those researchers can benefit from their research findings.
How do you think Africa can adopt the same kind of approach to investment in green energy, looking at the examples provided by Germany, through the European Commission?
The African Development Bank has green initiative. They have a desk that address climate change and climate change investment. So the government should take advantage of that window that you have at the African Development Bank. A big desk with some financial commitment running into billions of dollars for those who want to take initiative. And currently, the African Development Bank is supporting the Rural Electrification Agency in terms of providing mini-grids using green technology. So African countries should take advantage of those windows and make massive investment in those sectors.
So along the line of Africa needing technologies to actually make green energy available for it, despite of having some of the natural resources, isn't it a time to re-strategize using some trade agreements when the West come to tap primary products from Africa? Instead of payment in cash, should there be some arrangements towards technology transfer? Because it seems more expensive when payments for the primary products have been done, and then you want certain technologies, you have to buy the technology. It seems more expensive when you cross over to the other side. How can Africa strategically use what they have to get what they want?
I think we should just encourage massive investment in Africa rather than taking our primary products away. Let's bring some of those technology here so that we can take advantage of those technologies. So you don't need to come and take my lithium. You don't need to take plenty of oil and gas. Just do some massive investment here where you can add to the value chain of those specific industries so that people can benefit in Africa.
Thank you very much, Sam Ruji, for speaking with us today on reduction of carbon emission. It's a global challenge. We do hope that whatever is needed, if it demands that some of the legislations that have been agreed upon at regional levels, maybe for Europe and even for Africa, can be domesticated, and then countries will work at saying that there is less carbon emission. We need the world, we need the earth to be safe for all of us to stay. We don't yet know how other planets feel like, if it will be very conducive like the earth. So the earth is what we have, we must preserve it. Thank you for your great submissions on the show today.
Thank you very much indeed for having me.
We're not done yet with the show. We have so much more. Stay with us on Exchange.
We've got just what you need right here at Femi Wash Media. Call it the Midas Touch and you wouldn't be wrong. Let us record, produce, mix and master your audio like nobody does. Reach us on our contact today for the best quality job. Idumota Market. Eko Idumota, once a residential neighborhood, is home to Idumota Market located on Lagos Island. It is one of the oldest and arguably one of the largest markets in West Africa. Idumota is a historic neighborhood adjacent to the Lagos port that facilitated the slave trade and later, under the British indirect rule, it surrounded to exports that fueled the colonial enterprise. Idumota was also the location of an armed forces remembrance cenotaph called Soja Idumota, built as a monument to Nigerian soldiers who served with the West African Frontier Force. An Eyo Masquerade statue and a clock tower are also some monuments at Idumota. Idumota Market is so popular that large sales are recorded as early as 7 a.m. The market is made up of hundreds of lock-up shops occupying several multi-story buildings, with some measuring about 5 or more floors. In 2010, the Lagos State government demolished some illegal structures in order to improve vehicular and human movement in and around the markets. During weekdays, the neighborhood of Idumota is densely populated by shoppers, traders and bus passengers. From the Carter Bridge ascending into Lagos Island, passengers can see the neighborhood before disembarking at their final destination. Idumota Market accommodates the substantial inflow of imported goods. The bulk of import from abroad are routed first through Idumota and then on to other markets through Nigeria and other West and Central African countries. The energy of private Idumota traders and wholesalers facilitate this activity, where millions of US dollars worth of wholesale is exchanged daily. Idumota Market, Souk Enlightenment.
The challenge of governance is to see how we can leverage what is on the ground and convert this to wealth for the people.
Russia, China are gaining entry into Africa, and it would appear that some Western countries are losing out.
You're working as an expatriate worker, then you're paid in your currency. But then if you must spend those money, you need to convert those money to the local currency to spend.
For Social Security to work, we need to know exactly how many we are. We don't have a precise number. We need to know exact location of people.
When we address this exchange rate volatility, we will see definitely cost of goods and services will come down.
From a security point of view, we should employ the technology to ensure that we can track individuals and goods within the exchange.
You know, the Daily Exchange is all about shaping policy and advancing development. With our conversation today, we're set to give you the best of programming.
And Blessing Aiche.
We do hope that you enjoy every time you spend with us here today. The world needs peace. The world needs to come to a round table and find solutions to the pockets of troubles.
Early exchange, shaping policy, advancing development.
All right, it's still your favorite program, and we're still looking at sustainable development across the globe. We started from Germany to look at what is obtainable there, and now it's time for us to head to India, where we're going to talk about the power generation in India. India made history as the second largest coal user in the world when it comes to electricity generation. Let's see how this is going to play out and what our in-house guests will have to say about this. We're being joined by the wise man, Dr. Dauza Osamaze. Glad you have joined us this morning.
Femi, good morning. Blessing.
Good morning.
Good morning. I like this blue. It was good that I have to
the blue club.
I almost put on the blue suit today.
Oh, that's the spirit of early exchange.
Don't worry. On the second
what
thought,
do I have to do to ensure that I'm the only one wearing a particular color? Nobody twins with me.
Just accept the trend. And
don't worry, I'll think on something.
All right, it's good for us to live as a family. Now let's get back to the discussion. Looking at the global effort to decarbonize, activities, you've said 2050, and now you have India going into coal-fired electricity, becoming the second largest coal user in the world. What do you make of this development?
Well, for me, it's neither here nor there. And I think in the whole conversation about the sustainability debate, the world must be able to triangulate the three P or aspects of sustainable development, which is to say we have to look at, one, the economy, we look at, two, the people, and then, of course, the planet. And we will not be able to take these three in isolations. They have to be taken holistically. And I think this is where the whole argument about this sustainable transition is, for me, a debate that especially people from the third world and emerging nations are really not handling very well. The white had gone up that far in terms of development, and then we're seeing that we here back third world, we're suffering two terrible things. Number one, we're having poverty as a challenge, and of course we're asking that the world had to get off poverty. And two, we're also looking at people who are suffering and dying as a result of the development that is happening in the world. Right now, in strategic studies, you see people talking about the correlation between the civil crisis across third world countries, especially in Africa, with the development that is happening in the world. So we have to look at this narrative first and foremost. You take cobalt from Africa, you take lithium from Africa, you take crude oil from Africa to light up Europe. And Africa is in darkness on one hand, for example. And of course, where you are doing mining, this so-called non-renewable, to push the renewable agenda, people are dying of degradation. And that's why, of course, people are asking, look, Africa contributes less than 4% to carbon emission globally, but the causes or the effect or the consequence of carbon emission is higher and major in this part of the world. Now, this has been the debate. For years, India had been without electricity like just every African country, until Modi came and see how do we fix the energy condition in India, because it is critical to the survival of India, because poverty was also sprawling in India. And what has Modi to do was to put all sorts of energy in the basket. So while we are talking about the CO2 emission from the coal plant, we must also not forget that India has also invested so much in wind energy. They have also invested in some solar energy, and put them in the basket to be able to reach the provision of electricity for its people. And as we speak today, India is not just providing electricity for its citizens, it's also selling electricity to about 4 nations around its borders. And that for me is quite remarkable. And when you look at the economic side of all this conversation, India today remains the fastest growing economy globally, because for economy to grow, you need energy. And I think this is where really Africa needs to borrow a leaf from India.
Talking about borrowing a leaf from India, what do you think made India turn to the use of coal, which is giving them lots of energy. But what they were sustaining on before, the regular means of generating power, wind, hydro and all, was even dropping. The amount of power it was giving them was dropping. Why is it like coal is the new found energy source that the world is going to?
You know, it is a hypocrisy, even in the conversation that, of course, we also would need to also take a look at. I remember a few years ago, Oxfam was advocating for sustainable energy, and people were asking. They did a wristband from Indonesia that said, "Oh, let's green our world." And the factory that was producing that wristband were using child labor to produce the wristband, and say, what a hypocrisy. Now, you ask anywhere in the world, even including the most developed countries in America, in Europe, are they using coal? Coal is not just a new source of energy. When there was this Ukrainian-Russia war, and gas supply to Germany became so expensive, didn't Germany revert back to using of coal to generate electricity? They did. You see, this is a bivalent nature we find in the world. You are seeing a conversation that some people measure some certain things, and that's why yesterday I was saying in the other show that, look, you see, science is not as objective as people think. It's where people have value. When you are looking at, people are looking for survivor, which for me is critical. You can imagine the number and quantum of people that Modi has lifted out of poverty. In the last 8 years, over 100 million people have been moved out of poverty in India because of electrification. And I think that for me should be celebrated, really. That you're saying that the people's side of the conversation for the sustainability, this guy is doing his best. But they are not all coal. There's also the wind, there's also the thermal, the hydro, there's also the solar part of these things. But the entire energy mix is what India is happening. You see, but this conversation we see every time that you see people are putting you out on the template to say, oh, you are the worst emitter of carbon. I really don't see that. See, in Chinese take the raw material from Africa to build the factories that are producing even the so-called renewable energy from non-renewable source in Africa. So we should allow India to be, really. And this is where Africa itself also need to first of all survive. And I think our president was actually making such a comparison the last time while he was doing his campaign, that if the West had done a whole lot in terms of benefiting, we should be able to be allowed to grow on our own terms and using innovation to see how can we reduce emission through value engineering for India. And I think that should be left to the Indian scientists to do and see how can reduce the emission of CO2 in India using value engineering. But to say that, India is a threat to the world, I don't so believe. And I think the argument should be much more than that, because we have to find a way to ensure that people survive while we are preserving the planet. Because I don't think it's an animal that will live in the planet.
All right, let's look critically at what India has done with coal. They've been able to generate 115 terawatts. And, 1 terawatt is equivalent to 1 trillion watts. We use megawatts, and that's about 1 terawatt is equivalent to 1 million megawatts. But they've done 115 terawatts. How commendable is that? And what kind of lessons are here for other nations, looking at what India has done with coal?
You see, it's not just, it's to look comprehensively at the program of the President of India, Modi. What he has done in the last 8 years was to clean up the system. And if you see, one of the real arguments against power in Africa, for example, is the fact that there's no right pricing. And because pricing is not right, a lot of investment is not coming into Africa for the power sector. Because what you see is that government use power like a social service and say, oh, it's critical to security and national survival, and therefore we have to handle it. And so we don't allow people to come into that value chain. So we control the price of electricity. So the people who are investing in that energy sector are not really able to make money. And so the business is not attractive. Because like we know from Business 101, the goal of every entrepreneur is to make profit. And if you are not making profit possible for an entrepreneur, of course, he will not get into that business. So Modi understood that very clearly. And so what he started to do was to look at what was the source of the problem, why there was no right pricing. And he found out that the elite in India were actually using the poor as an argument for poor pricing of electricity in India. So say, oh, if we raise the price, the poor will suffer. And the poor were going to die. And Modi was thinking how to be able to address this situation. And so what he did, first and foremost, was to start the registration of Indian citizens across the globe. And he succeeded in giving ID card to every Indian citizen. About 1.3 million people spend about $1 billion in 8 years to provide identification for everybody. And so it was clear from the dashboard who were the real poor Indians. So Modi was able to see that, look, okay, about 300 million Indians were actually very poor, and they will not be able to buy electricity at the right price. And so he decided to do direct subsidy to the 300 million poor Indians. So assume the cost of energy, let's use, is $1, the right price. And of course, they've been selling at 40 cents. Modi transfer the remaining 60 cents to these 300 million people directly into their bank accounts. And because they have all been registered, they all have cards and number attached to it, that you can know their data wherever they are and see that these people actually were poor and they don't have money anywhere because of one code for identification. Then they were able to put money in the purse of these people. Now what happened? All the big men that were benefiting from subsidy, hitherto, using the poor, who were living in darkness, had no more arguments to say the poor were going to pay. So right now as we speak, India is paying right price for electricity. And this attracted investors into India, and they put money. And what you're seeing today is as a result of cleaning up the system, and we're not hanging in one angle to be saying, oh, some people will suffer if we remove subsidy. And India has dealt with that system, and this is what many African leaders need to do, to be able to clean the system and see who actually is benefiting from subsidy. We subsidize petrol, and somebody come to wharf here without any. Sanusi told us this in 2013, how people were offloading 10 vessels in a day in our wharf that cannot take one vessel. And they bring the paper to Abuja to NNPC for payment. So we were funding and subsidizing the rich. And that is why we have not gotten it right. Because if this is priced rightly, you will have the right kind of investor come into the industry, put money in there, and then, of course, electricity will no longer become a problem for many African countries. But elite will not allow this to happen, because as they continue to benefit from the system of subsidy, they will not want that subsidy to go. You just imagine that you are doing cash transfer now. The president say, oh, cash transfer is going to start in May, and they give you 10 billion naira for cash transfer. And you just put this one in, maybe whether it's in the capital market or you put it in the money market, and after 30 days you bring it out, you have made so much money. Isn't it? Now, this is the kind of trading that is going on. And so some people are benefiting, and we are using the poor as argument that if we remove it, people will suffer. And then, of course, we continue to fund corruption, and we are not seeing light. I saw a map today that really triggered my thinking. In the daytime, global map, Africa has the brightest of vision. And in the night, we are the darkest.
All right. Correcting that darkness now, using the case of India, what they've been able to do right to make sure that in the energy mix, the coal-fired plants give them 80% as compared to what used to be. That's a huge success. But give an example of what you also said about attracting investors because of the right pricing. What can be done here? How can it happen? We don't, in Africa or in Nigeria specifically, the data is not even there. If you are to pay the subsidy directly to the users, how would that even happen?
You see, yesterday I was explaining to my friend what Moscal and Pareto wrote in one of their theses on what they call the theory of the circulation of the elite in most of the third world country, how we sit down and think about how to perpetuate the poverty of the people. And every time I look at the theorization of Moscow, I see it play out in Africa here. For example, there's no rocket science in terms of identifying who we are as a country. The only reason why it hasn't been possible is because the elite that are benefiting from the system do not want the system to end. And that's why I feel that what we need in Africa, we need a leader who is intellectually very savvy and understanding how the elite are corrupting the system and making it not to work. And then, of course, just have to be ahead of them in terms of thinking to pull them down, which is what Modi did in India. And don't forget that Modi, before he became the Prime Minister of India, had a lot of baggage. He was seen to be a cowboy and a very bad boy. And people really didn't expect him to win the election. But of course, he put reform forward because he also knew how these things were working. And for Modi, this was the time that India had to succeed. And then he's pushing the agenda to see India succeed. And so we are seeing India emerging and moving its citizens off poverty radar. But the elite here who are conniving, they collaborate to impoverize the people, are the one that will not allow this thing to say, wait, what? These issues we are talking about, they are not rocket science. They are within our space. We can register Nigerians in one day.
Really? 200 million people?
Oh, yes. In one day. If we said today and said, everybody go to your local government and put your data down, everybody will be there. Wherever we are, we will queue. But the truth of the matter is that after this queue, people will not allow. See, there are a lot of things that we need to do today that internet has put in our disposal. You are opening bank account today online. Isn't that true?
True.
Everybody on a smartphone gets to the bank app, type your name, upload your credentials, and forward it. We don't need 2 years to register ourselves. We don't even need too much money. The only thing that is the problem is that those who will benefit from the registration process, who want booths to be built, where people are going to say, who want to hire canopy, those people who want to hire generator to power the device, will not allow this simple process to work. So this is the issue and this is the challenge that most African nations face, because everything is about contract. And because we have over-contracted our life, nothing seems working. So the starting point is that if everybody has a BVN, for example, as we do, or national identity number that identify every Nigerian. So which means whatever thing you have is digitized. So if you go to land registry and put your number, whether BVN or NIN number, all the landed property you have in this world will show. If you put your BVN number, where your account is in any bank will show. We will know the balance that is there. So we will be able to actually determine the poor of the poorest. And then work out a modality to address this poor of the poorest so that we can have right pricing that will attract investors to come. Because there is no investor who will come into a system and will say, okay, I want to sink in money here, but I don't want to make profit. You can't find such investors. So this is why people are talking about creating an ecosystem that will make investment profitable. Then people can put money.
Interesting. You know, it's often said there are two sides to a coin, you know.
They are a third side now.
Oh, interesting. I would love to know that, maybe after now. But the point I'm making is India is trying, not trying, they've made significant progress with coal, generating about 115 terawatts. On the other hand, they are also creating another problem, which is the carbon
Which is what
emission.
every technology do.
Which is now...
It's not just carbon. It's not just coal. Every technology in the world that has ever been made, all of them have their own sides.
But if you look at the statistics now, is the record, in fact, it's the highest so far. Over 100 million metric tons of CO2 now. Isn't that significant?
Oh, yes.
Or someone would just argue, okay, I solved the problem of electricity.
Yes,
Does it matter the other side, which is the emission that have been produced here?
You see, I was sharing with in the other program yesterday, who is supposed to be suffering this CO2? Are Indian people complaining? Why are you complaining for them?
Do they need to complain? Or is it something that the effects may not be felt now, but over time?
That is what, who is complaining? Why are you complaining for India?
Because it's a global,
it's
a global fight.
See, this global conspiracy, we must have to get a way to deconstruct some of all these things. Yes, America have developed technology they call the carbon capture storage system, which is still being fathomed out to see how much carbon is being emitted. You see, some of all these issues, people really need to query it and see how it works. How we assign value to some of all these things that we cannot capture. So how do I put tonnage, for example, to a carbon emitted on a car and I'm able to calculate that is actually 1 or 2 tons? You see, the old adage that if you want to kill a dog,
give it a bad
you
name.
give it a bad name. It all plays out in international politics, and these are some of the issues that, of course, the world must be wary of. Because somehow, some people who have been benefiting from the international system want to continue to benefit, and therefore put tax on some certain people when they say they are making some advanced progress. And this is what Nkrumah called neo-colonialism. That you see that somebody who you're supposed to be called a slave is making some advancement, and therefore the advancement is very irritating, and some people sit around table and decide to design theory to pull down that kind of development. These are issues that we must also look at. Yeah, you see, why this conversation not started from Copenhagen in 1995 of saying, oh, how do we really deal with the issue of climate change? And they say, throw away your fridge. Throw away the old technology. We did. But it is on record today that even the depletion of the ozone layer is done more by natural force than any so-called emission in science. So these are the arguments that we have to put on the table. When they're saying, oh, emission is killing people, how are we going to really account for this number of people that have been killed? How are we not sure that the people who are advocating this, the use of CO2, destroying the planet, are actually not because they have already developed alternative source. Because energy has become so expensive and the only source that comes from it is from Africa. And this is therefore, and the third world countries who have been their platform for development had always been victim, and they don't want to see them grow. That's the real problem here. So for me, really, I see a lot of conspiracy in some of all these arguments. Since 2015, COP21, about energy financing, which it was said that Africa will need, for example, for that transition, about $246 billion annually as investment. And as reparation from the West, who are the ones that are creating these CO2 emissions. Because we are generating less and they are generating the more, and they are using it to punish us, that they should pay us. How many of these Western nations has committed to that financing? None. Now, what are they doing right now? In the last COP28 meeting, you want to start to give us loan. See, debt financing and official development financing for third world to buy your technology. This is what you see here. So I feel nations should be allowed to actually grow. That's what sovereignty should mean for us. Yes, we agree with all this theorization, but also to see to the extent, because who is giving us this principle? So we should allow them to measure their CO2 emission and develop their own technology to deal with the problem. Because every technology has its own side effect. There even medication we take, don't they have side effects? They do.
But this is huge, over
so
100 million metric tons.
Are we going to say because medication has side effects that when people are sick, they should not use them?
Isn't there a need to strike a balance?
Yeah, but that is a responsible use. That's what we're talking about. What is important, first and foremost, is to provide life for the people who are in India so that they can survive. So if they have food to eat and they are living well, then they will be able to think of how to reduce the effect of whatever thing that they are emitting. But to say that they have to stay out of it so that they can remain in darkness, and when you are not making provision for the so-called renewable energy, I think that is asking too much from the very poor.
All right, that's interesting. But we need to go on a short break now. We'll be right back in a moment to continue our conversation. Don't go away.
We've got just what you need right here at Femi Wash Media. Call it the Midas Touch and you wouldn't be wrong. Let us record, produce, mix and master your audio like nobody does. Reach us on our contact today for the best quality job.
Broad Street. Broad Street, situated in Lagos Island, is steeped in Nigerian history. Once the biggest financial hub of the country, it housed the headquarters of major banks, linked the CBN, the stock exchange, and the loads of lender companies. Broad Street is a historically significant street. It has played a central role in the development of Lagos and history, an important commercial and administrative center for the British colonial authorities. It was also a home to some of the city's earliest modern buildings. Broad Street was a residential area in the pre-colonial era. With the British came the Methodist Boys High School in 1878 and the Broad Street Prison in 1882, renamed Freedom Park. The General Hospital, which was a British military hospital, was built in 1893, being the first general hospital in Nigeria. The old British Secretariat building, which is now the Federal Ministry of Justice, was built in 1906. Broad Street has seen a full turn into modern commercial office blocks, complexes, skyscrapers, and markets from the outer marina through Akpombo, early into the Adeliji Adele Road. Broad Street is one of the busiest streets in Nigeria on weekdays, where commercial activities take place day and night. From modern buildings to ancient structures, this street gives one a raw dose of life in Lagos. Broad Street is often referred to as Lagos Financial District. It boasts a mix of architectural styles, reflecting its long history, colonial-era buildings, Victorian and Edwardian architectural features, alongside more modern skyscrapers and structures. Broad Street remains a vital, vibrant part of the Nigerian economy. Broad Street. Souk Enlightenment.
I'm okay.
My name is Raymond Bola Brown.
Hi, my name is Fred Amata, and you are on to Souk News.
If you are watching this channel for the first time, make sure you continue to watch it because this is Souk News.
Shout out to Souk News. Actually, I don't know. I really enjoyed the little moment I spent with you, and I think with more of this.
Souk News. Here's the Souk News who had the courage to transcend a locked off camera and actually have a conversation with a human being. It's a pleasure, Souk News. Thank you very much.
This early exchange with Femi Ayodele.
You know, the Early Exchange is all about shaping policy and advancing development. With our conversation today, we're set to give you the best of programming.
And Blessing Aiche.
We do hope that you enjoy every time you spend with us here today. The world needs peace. The world needs to come to a round table and find solutions to the pockets of troubles.
Early exchange, shaping policy, advancing development.
Thank you for staying with us on Early Exchange. We're still looking at energy, the sources of energy, the issues that comes along with whatever source of energy that any country pick on. And today we're looking at India having increased the energy generation from the coal-fired plants in India, and they're having about 115 terawatts from that. But on the flip side, what is the implication of that in terms of the carbon emission from that? Idausa Osamanze, who is Director, Research and Policy, African Development Studies Center, and also in as analyst here, has been speaking to that. Now, you have said that there is always something to pay for when a new technology comes. Now, in the case of reducing carbon emission, you seem to feel like there's some politics around it. What is the way to go from here in creating that balance? Some time ago, we're told that, there's need for planting of trees and some other things to absorb the carbon in the atmosphere. Is that not something practicable, or is not enough to absorb the amount of carbon being emitted into the atmosphere so that these technologies can actually continue?
Yeah, I don't have a problem with all the postulations about the possibility or the effect of carbon on the environment. But I also want to advance an alternative kind of a theory or a model to look at these issues, really. That is not the problem of climate issues, really, which are very obvious and significant across the globe, may not necessarily be coming from CO2. There's a whole lot that civilization has done to the human ecosystem. And this, for me, are quite instructive. As a little boy who grew up in a village, when I see honey today, and the honey that I used to know, you know that there's differences in taste. Because the thing that the honey used to feed on those days are no longer available for the honey. So what they are producing now is different from what they used to produce. And this is because civilization had driven nature to a point where this natural thing that God has put into existence for us, that's conditioning how we are living, has been destroyed by human civilization. That is, for me, the real issue that the world also have to look into. We make this world. No science created it. And we cannot run away from the fact that the world just emerged, like they said in the Big Bang Theory. The two organisms just suddenly sprang up and then the world evolved. We can't go to that kind of thinking. It's absurd. And so science must get to the point of accepting that this world we live in, we met it. And there's a superhuman being who put this structure in place. And how this thing should work, he also put it in place. And why in search of comfort, we have destroyed some of all these things that are actually responsible for the kind of climate that we are seeing today. We are pushing the ocean. We are driving it out. All these issues, we also need to account for them because they are natural issues. So we can't just stay here and be arguing that it is carbon CO2 that is responsible for the climate change. That, for me, is a simplistic argument as far as I'm concerned. So we need to be able to really even define what these impacts are, really, when you talk about CO2 impact. Can we shut down for one day and see whether the climate will restore? Everything, maybe the whole world. We shut down for 6 months during the COVID. No ship moving, no car moving. The world was a standstill. Were there no climate issue? These are the things that we need to be frank with ourselves. If there is no economy around these things, I would be having this argument or suspicion. But there's a whole lot of economy around it because some people are mining dollars from these issues. They take cobalt from your place at ridiculous prices. They turn it into what they call the EV vehicles, and they sell it to you as exorbitant prices. You are always the one bearing the brunt.
But why is that easy to do? What is the role of Africa that is making this conspiracy easy to happen?
It's the laziness of thinking. The very laziness of thinking. That we as black people, that anything they throw to us, we put it on the table, we accept it hook, line, and sinker. Nobody want to talk about it. Nobody want to criticize this. They say, oh, it came from Harvard, it came from Stanford, and therefore it is correct.
But we have lots of intellectuals, professors of sciences here.
This is a problem. So we use Harvard, we use Stanford, we use Yale as our standard to even measure what we are doing because we have no confidence in what we can do. This is the real issue.
All right. Let's stay on the subject here because if we go this route, that's a conversation for another day. Now, let's look at what India has done with coal generation when it comes to electricity. Now, if you look at other sources, it's looking at the generation from coal at the expense of other sources. Let me read out the statistics to you. Coal generation came as an output from solar, wind, and hydro facilities dropped by 3%, 19%, and 21.5% respectively. So as much as India has generated so much electricity from coal, but the output also from wind, solar has dropped. How do you reconcile this? What do you make of the energy mix in India and then the need or the advocacy for transition into renewable energy?
Femi, you see,
isn't there any to what am I arguing?
I saw the argument.
Yeah.
But I also wanted to see it in other perspective. The law of competitive advantage for you as a person, which is cheaper for me to do. And it's going to give me the maximum return. Where do I need to put my energy? Do I need this heavy investment in this area and get low heat? or I should put my focus in this place where I can easily get the maximum yield.
And interestingly, India has coal in abundance.
So they love competitive advantage. And this is what it is. Because nations compete in 3 different ways. It's either you're competing on price, you're getting something cheaper, or you're competing on something differentiation. You are able to differentiate your offering from what other people are offering. Otherwise, you have to do what every other person is doing and play in the right ocean, which likely will consume you. And then think in a world where people are having advantage, where nature has blessed you, you should be able to take advantage of those things and make more of it, rather than constitute or channel your energy to sources that are going to cost you more and be feeding other nations at the expense of your own people. That's my view.
All right, so going forward, the companies that are into production or that are looking into making other kinds of technology available that will not emit carbon. For now, many of them are just trying out things. It's not yet feasible how much of new technologies they can create for these other companies, but money is going into that. What is the hope that in the very near time, even the target that the world has set for itself, the transition, the full-scale transition from fossil fuel and other source of energy that emits lots of carbon will be completed?
Well, it's a very, very fundamental question that you are asking. But I'm also afraid that I may not have a straight answer to it. And the reason is very simple. People have peculiar problems. And I think problems are also, to a very large extent, geographic. And which is to say that for every geographic problem, the solution is within those geography. And people should allow to find out solution to what happened. You see, one of the things that keep reverberating in my mind as I sit here is what happened during the COVID-19 pandemic. Some African doctors were advocating that some malaria drugs, which we are used to, could manage COVID and in some cases help people to recover. We were told by WHO, engineered by the West, that because of the side effect, which is not known or seen, that the use of those drugs, managing those things, should be discouraged. Why we wait for them to develop a vaccine that never existed? And when they finish developing the vaccine, they wrote on the vaccine that if the vaccine kills you, you cannot hold the pharmaceutical company that produces it responsible because it's a trial. And the entire world accepted it. This for me is unacceptable. And this is the real thing that Africans, and then indeed the entire third world, must begin to look at and take their destiny in their own hand and stop leaving it in the hand of these people who only think about what to profit from Africa. Those who are buying cobalt from Africa, those who are buying lithium from Africa, those who are buying gold from Africa, those who are buying crude oil from Africa, they don't have crisis. All the places where these raw materials are taken from, there are perpetual crises. Why? These are for me the fundamentals, and this is where we really need to have honest conversation. So that somebody don't throw something at your face and tell you it's scientific, and therefore because we have all, our head has all been screwed in such a way to think the way they want us to think, and nobody can even say, let's put it down and look at it our own way and do our own thing. And until Africa or indeed the entire world start to do things their own way, some people will continue to take advantage of other people. Every scientific endeavor take a process. So Africans or third world people should also be given, or the emerging economies be given the opportunity to evolve like they have done. That's my way of looking at it.
All right, let's wrap up with this. Looking at what India has done with coal, will you suggest that Nigeria should take or replicate that example?
As long as we solve our energy problem, I am 100% sink.
As long as it solves the problem.
All right, we'll leave it there. 100% into creating sustainable energy for Nigeria. At least we won't be hearing of the national grid collapse off and on.
Yeah, of course, we will not. At least we'll be able to sell energy and they have proper money. And then, of course, our young people who are looking for a job, they have something to channel their energy into. Because the electrification of all things is so important to world civilization and development. And that is one single technology that has transformed the entire world. And of course, African and indeed Nigeria, we have not benefited from that technology. And I think it's the right time while we are studying other things that can be better than wind, that can be better than hydro, that can be better than sunshine as source of energy, as nature may want us to have it. Let's make use of what we have to get what we want.
Thank you very much, Delsa Samanze, for your thoughts on the show today, on the issues that we've discussed. Yes, let's see what happens with energy, what each country would do, and let's see if the target that the world is giving itself to have zero carbon emission for Germany is 2045 for most of the world. That's what they're looking at. Let's see how feasible it becomes. But I think that research has to be done to ensure that we get there fast and we also make good money from the resources that we have. But the earth preservation, very important.
I do hope so. Ultimately, our lives are in the hands of God and not in the hand of science.
That's the show today. Tune in again tomorrow, 8 a.m. West African time, to have more from Early Exchange. I am Blessing Aiche. Please do not sign out of Souk News. There's so many wonderful programs all designed for your viewing delight. Market Insight comes up at 11, and there'll be news at noon. Souk Sports, I beg your pardon, comes up at noon, and then there will be Souk Pause at 4 p.m. Enjoy your day.
And from me to you, seek to know, because it is better to know rather than to be known, because what you know will make you to be known. It's better to seek knowledge. Don't forget the conversation continues on our social media platform, and Early Exchange returns tomorrow. I am Femi Ayodele. Bye for now.
The challenge of governance is to see how we can leverage what is on the ground and convert this to wealth for the people.
Russia, China are gaining entry into Africa, and it would appear that some Western countries are losing out.
You're working as an expatriate worker, then you're paid in your currency. But then if you must spend those money, you need to convert those money to the local currency to spend.
For Social Security to work, we need to know exactly how many we are. We don't have a precise number. We need to know exact location of people.
When we address this exchange rate volatility, we will see definitely cost of goods and services will come down.
From a security point of view, we should employ the technology to ensure that we can track individuals and goods within the continent.
This is Early Exchange with Femi Ayodele.
You know, the Early Exchange is all about shaping policy and advancing development. With our conversation today, we're set to give you the best of programming.
And Blessing Aiche.
We do hope that you enjoy every time you spend with us here today. The world needs peace. The world needs to come to a round table and find solutions to the pockets of troubles.
Early Exchange, shaping policy, advancing development.